room, stand up, take 50 steps plus, actually being able to ambulate. We usually call them household or community ambulators, where they're usually inside on a flat level ground, very steady walking, right? And then the emphasis when we get to K3, that's they have the ability or potential, again, that's always the big thing we talk about, that they have potential to ambulate with variable cadence. So, if you can have someone walk and you think in the next 5 years they can go from this to speeding up and slowing down, that's the potential, right? And it goes back to the big difference based off of what criteria and what insurance will allow. If we have a guy where if they're very sick and just get them to do this and walk 20, 30 steps, and we don't really see potential, they're a really low level K2, right? Can they get to that K3? Probably not, right? And then, you're getting into a K4, that's someone, usually it's kids, ambulation with excessive basic ambulatories, that's sports, activities, running, jogging, jumping. There's not a lot of K4 amputees. So the thing I mentioned earlier is the amputee mobility predictor. So what this test does is there are different tasks you guys would perform in therapy, and then that will give you a score. And again, it's out of, so for the AMP no pro, that means with no prosthetic on, the highest you can get is 43, and with your prosthesis it's 47. And what this test does is you can do all these different steps throughout the test and measure their activity. And so, for example, like number one, can the person sit forward in a chair with their arms folded across their chest for 60 seconds? If they can do that, they get a 1. If they can't, they get a 0. I know it's pretty hard to see that, not small. Like number two, reaching forward and grasping a ruler. The tester holds it 12 inches beyond the extension of the arm. So if they're sitting, they take a ruler that's 12 inches longer. Can they reach forward and grab that ruler without falling? It does not attempt, can't grasp, requires arm support, reaches forward with no problems. So you go through all these steps, and there's 21 of them. And then when you're done, it gives you a score. And it depends if you have AMP Pro is with the prosthesis and AMP No Pro is no prosthesis. And you get a score. And that score down here correlates to what K level they are. So obviously, like if you scored a 20, between 9 and 20, you're a K1. If you're 21 to 28, you're a K2. 29 to 36, you're a K3. 39 to 43, you're a K4. And the nice thing is you guys could do this as a base step. So you have a brand new amputee walks into your facility today. You're like, where is Paul? I don't know amputee. Let's do these tests. Let's see where it's at. And I don't even have a prosthesis. They have just amputated. This is maybe my second or third time with you, and we just want to get a baseline. Well, you can do these tests, and immediately, after so many minutes, you can say, okay, well, Paul scored a 27. Without his prosthesis, he's technically today we put him at a K2, right? And we go through therapy, and before I get my prosthesis, maybe we do this test again in 4 weeks or a couple months. Say it's 2 months before I get fit for my prosthesis. We do this again, and you're like, okay, Paul was at a 28. Did he go up or down? Well, maybe like that time, I got pneumonia, and I was in the hospital for a week or two, and I didn't have a prosthesis yet, and I got worse. I got 22, right? Well, why? Okay, well, he was in the hospital, that made some sense. Or it's the other way, he did all these therapies for 4 or 5 weeks, following your guys' guidance, right? And now I bumped myself, and now I'm a 32. So now I moved from a K2 and I made to a K3, right? So at least we have some data. And then once they get their prosthesis, so they see John or Bill, they cast, they get their prosthesis, we have them do all these tests again with their prosthesis. And where are they at? How do they score? So at least we have some data to go off of, and it gives us a starting point, right? And, someone scored a 28, am I going to say they have no potential to be a K3 in 5 years? Probably not, right? You're pretty unlikely to not score one more point one more thing in 5 years to get a little better, I'd be pretty lame if I couldn't make up 1 point, right? Now, if I'm a 9, am I going to make it to a 29? 20 points? Probably not. I don't think I'd get to a Cape group, right? Maybe, but, so some of that's, again, it goes back to, in this original slide, what is the person's potential, right? Where can it get to?
I don't know if you guys got to design this with Bob Gailey. He's the therapist, PhD, and he does a lot of lectures in our field, so he really knows prosthetics. So he designed this, so everybody he's a super smart guy, so everybody kind of accepted this as kind of like the standard.
Yeah. And the next thing, too, is, again, you guys can utilize this test for more therapy, right? Like, does your therapy work? Right? Right? And if you don't have a prosthesis, well, that's it. Then you can't blame us, the prosthetists, yeah? Not yet. Once you get the prosthesis, you can let us know. But, at least you have, is it working, right? Are we working together as a die improving? And we got some metrics to go. Let's name with timed up and go test, right? Things like that. 4-minute walk test. Not everyone can do that. But, my timed up and go from here to there, it takes me 9 to 10 seconds, and then we're improving that to 8, 7, whatever it might be, right? The person's improving. So it's nice to have some metrics to go off of. So I'm not going to go through the whole test, obviously, today, but that's how it works. And then obviously it gives you a score as to where they're at.
I have a question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Because we have a hard time finding those lines where we could print them off and use them.
Sure.
There was one website that had a link to them, and then they finished their.
Yeah, we have one you hop. We can get you guys. Josh, could you make a note to make sure we get the NC mobility test, the test? I think we even have one printed out in front of our, the office.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get that, and we can give you, PDF copy so you can always save it and we'll just print it next to you.
That'd be great.
Yeah. You want to talk about kids? Yes.
Put on my finger. So with the PDF, it was interesting with code clocks. The thing that they mentioned repeatedly was the relationship that they have with you and the relationship that you have with them. Pediatric, same thing, but it's it's also the relationship with the parents because it's all built in trust. And with the kids, you have to, I tell my wife all the time, working with providing pediatric care has allowed me to keep my immaturity. She doesn't like it, but so but I do. I like getting down on the floor with the kids. I like to be with the kids. They teach me. Even after 40 years, there's something to learn. The parents too, they see whether there's a connection or not. And it's challenging. And we're going to see each other more often. I have one of my pediatric patients that soon as school lets out, it's every June that they make their first appointment for casting. They're going to go see the orthopedic surgeon. She's a trauma patient. They're going to go see the orthopedic surgeon, get a script for a new life. Every June. Now that's going to start because she's become a teenager, and I don't know, she's probably getting a little closer to being skeletally mature. So that's going to slow down a little bit. But, for the last, 5 years. And, the things that I like to know is, what's important to her. Let's talk about the things that are important to you.